Lake Biwa is the largest lake in Japan and one of the oldest lakes in the world. The lake was born some 4 million years ago when powerful movements in the Earth's crust gave rise to a deep canyon that filled with water. Water is the resource of life. A great number of life forms depend on the water in Lake Biwa. Human beings, fish and other animals, plants, and microorganisms. What kind of life forms can we find within the lake water? What kind of food do they eat? Let's enter the planktonic world of Lake Biwa. Our voyage is made possible by using advanced microscope technology. This submersible microscope is a new instrument mainly developed at the Lake Biwa Research Institute for underwater research. It is lowered into the water to observe the Lake Biwa plankton. Here we go to the small inner world of the biggest lake in Japan. These are the plankton of Lake Biwa. The lake water world you are looking at is 2 millimeters long and 3 millimeters wide. The plankton living in this inner space are too small to be seen with the naked eye. But once magnified, you can see the great variety of shapes and forms of the plankton. Round, long, moving, still. The word plankton means wanderer in Greek. The plankton look like spaceships wandering through a microcosmos. There are two kinds of plankton: microscopic plants called the phytoplankton and microscopic animals called the zooplankton. Lake Biwa has about 300 kinds of phytoplankton and about 200 kinds of zooplankton. Let's first look at the phytoplankton. This type of phytoplankton is called a desmid. Most desmid cells are bright green and beautifully symmetrical. This species is about 1/10 of a millimeter in size. Phytoplankton, just like large plants, contain the green pigment chlorophyll. This allows them to absorb sunlight and to produce carbohydrate and oxygen by photosynthesis. Other life forms can survive and grow in Lake Biwa thanks to the oxygen and organic matter produced by the phytoplankton. This is Pediastrum biwae. It is a phytoplankton found only within Lake Biwa. We therefore call it an endemic species, one of many species that evolved over millions of years within the unique environment of Lake Biwa. This is Melocera solida. The part which looks like a ladder is a transparent, glass-like shell. This covers and protects the microscopic plant. Melocera solida is also a species found only within Lake Biwa. It needs cool, clean water and is now declining in the lake because of pollution. This species is called Asteronella. It is another phytoplankton covered with a glass-like shell. But in this species, the cells remain together to form a star-shaped cluster. Here we see Volvox aureus. They look like soccer balls gliding through the water. Volvox is one of many phytoplankton that can swim. Such species propel themselves using fine hairs called flagella. Volvox sometimes looks like a set of small balls trapped within a larger ball. In fact, this is how it reproduces. The small spheres are daughter colonies, which are released once the parent colony grows older and breaks open. These are Dinobrion, another species of swimming phytoplankton. Each cell has two flagella, a long one and a short one, and is protected within a delicate case. The cells remain clustered together in a tree-shaped colony. This species, called Ceracium, is another example of swimming phytoplankton. You might be able to see its long flagellum coming out between the two horns on its back. By beating this flagellum backwards and forwards, they propel themselves through the water. So many kinds of phytoplankton live in the water. Gliding, swimming, or motionless, of many different colors and forms. They are usually invisible to us, but can suddenly reveal their presence during periods of massive growth. Here you can see red stripes spreading out on the surface of Lake Biwa. This phenomenon is called a red tide. It is the result of very high concentrations of phytoplankton. Let's take a look at what kinds of phytoplankton cause the red tide in Lake Biwa. These round yellow phytoplankton are Uroglena americana. Their size is between 0.1 and 0.2 millimeter. They are a fast-swimming species attracted by light. In just 1 hour, this many have gathered towards the light. Let's look at them enlarged. We can see that each individual is actually a colony of tiny cells. They swim towards the light by coordinated beating of their flagella. It is usually in spring that Uroglena forms a red tide in Lake Biwa. These phytoplankton cause the water to turn a turbid blue-green color. This phenomenon is called a water bloom. This one forms a colony called microcystis. Each colony is about 0.2 millimeter across. These are anabaina. The tiny cells link together to form a chain. Anabaina can also produce water blooms. These phytoplankton are called cyanobacteria. Cyano because they contain blue-green pigments. Bacteria because they have a very primitive type of cell. Cyanobacteria prefer the hottest months of the year when there is less mixing in the lake. Their cells contain tiny pockets of air which allow them to float. On calm days, they float to the surface and produce the blue-green color that we can see as streaks in the water. Next, let's look at the zooplankton of Lake Biwa. All of these microscopic animals swim through the water. Let's look at them enlarged. This one is a kind of water flea called bosmina. Its moving appendages allow it to filter out food particles from the water while swimming. This is Daphnia, about 1 millimeter in size. It also belongs to the water flea group. Another group of zooplankton are the copepods. One such example in Lake Biwa is Eodiaptimus. It is also about 1 millimeter in size. There are also much smaller zooplankton in Lake Biwa. One of the most common groups is the rotifers. This rotifer is Caratella. You can see markings on their backs, which look a little like the carapace of turtles. Rotifers swim through the water by the synchronized beating of minute hairs called cilia arranged around their mouth. Trichocerca swim in a twisting motion through the lake water. Each of these animals is about 0.2 millimeter long. Polyarthra is a high-speed rotifer. If it was scaled up to the size of a baseball, it would be traveling at 100 kilometers per hour. This clump of rotifers, looking like a rugby ball, is a troop of Canoculus. Each individual is trumpet-shaped and attached to the colony via its tail. Such colonies may contain hundreds of rotifers, living together in apparent harmony. The smallest life forms in the zooplankton world are protozoa. These animals each have only one cell. This species is a ciliate, so named because of the many short hairs or cilia which allow it to swim and collect food. This animal, called Bodo, is even smaller than the ciliates. It is also a protozoan, with longer hairs or flagella to swim through the water. These smallest zooplankton are about 100 times smaller than the water fleas. We have now looked at many kinds of phytoplankton and zooplankton. Now let's see how they live within the lake. These white birds are egrets. They feed on small fish. On land, we often find insects eating the leaves of plants. They in turn are eaten by birds. This feeding network of animals on plants, predators, and their prey is called a food web. The plankton are key players in the food web of lakes. Sunlight is the energy source captured by phytoplankton, which are then available as food for the zooplankton. Zooplankton are eaten by small fish. These small fish, in turn, are eaten by large fish. The nutrients originally in the lake water have now passed via the tiny plant plankton, then animal plankton, all the way through to large fish. This is the aquatic food web, and it connects together all lives within the lake. Now let's watch some scenes from the living food web of Lake Biwa. A small fish eats a water flea, one of the larger kinds of zooplankton. But what kinds of food do water fleas eat? Water fleas feed on smaller life forms in the lake. This is Daphnia. Its feeding appendages rake through the water and filter out living particles. This food is then swept into its mouth by brush-like attachments. Watch carefully. Food is conveyed into the mouth of Daphnia via the currents created by the feeding appendages. The food then moves into the throat and digestive system of the animal. Now you can see the passage of brown food particles within the water flea. The small mouth of Daphnia limits the size of particles it can ingest. Oversized food items are raked away and discarded. The smaller food items are eaten and digested, and waste products are then excreted back into the lake water. Here you can see the rotifer Phylinia slowly swimming through the lake water like tadpoles. Watch out! Something has just attacked the rotifer. The predator is Plosoma, a carnivorous zooplankton species. Some zooplankton eat other plankton almost as big as themselves. This rotifer is feeding on microcystis, the phytoplankton which causes blue-green water blooms. The animal systematically moves from cell to cell within the colony. Here, the rotifer has now changed its diet to Uroglena, the swimming colonies which cause red tides. Like the water fleas, the rotifers ingest their prey and recycle nutrients back into the lake by excretion. Feeding is an essential part of the life of zooplankton. But of course, just as essential is the need to produce offspring. Daphnia reproduces by way of eggs. Here, the eggs are changing in size as well as form. The eggs are becoming oval-shaped. We can now distinguish eyes. Finally, the baby Daphnia are born. Extremely small, but already with the recognizable form of a miniature water flea. Rotifers also reproduce by eggs, often a huge size for their body to carry. It takes almost a day for rotifer eggs to hatch. Again, a new life has been born in the planktonic world. This is the sub-millimeter world of Lake Biwa, a microecosystem of minute plants and animals which feed, grow, and reproduce to support the aquatic food web. The development of the submersible microscope now allows us to explore this world much more closely, to research exciting new topics, and to make new discoveries. These studies of the plankton will help us to understand Lake Biwa as a living system and our relationship with it as human beings.